architecture affects everybody. From the hospital where you're born, to the schools and the grocery stores, markets, libraries, theaters, every part of a person's life is based upon an architect's presence.
Architects live and die by the images that are taken of their work, as these images alone are what most people see. For every person who visits a private house, there may be 10,000 who only view it as a photo.
I'm looking at the base of the steps. They die into the railing just where the wheel is. It's perfect. Yeah.
Photographer Julius Shulman has defined the way we look at modernism. First focusing his lens upon architecture in the 1930s, Julius continues to document the evolution of built environments and architectural forms today.
Print it. Print it. You are now in Southern California, 2 miles from Hollywood Boulevard. Listen. Not a sound, just the birds. What more can a man want out of his life? This is heaven. Nothing here was planned. It's a mishmash, every conceivable kind of plant. And people don't like this kind of garden. Matter of fact, many people come here, they say, boy, I'd like to come some morning while you're still asleep with a machete and chop, 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 chop. They want to cut back my density. I'd chop your head off if you did that, I said. By God, this is unbelievable. This tree hasn't blossomed for years. It's growing in the wrong place. You don't plant an orange tree in the midst of, but all the other trees have shielded it. And yet, we'll probably have oranges this year. That is fragrant. Oh. I don't have to have a physical church. What can be more beautiful than a church in which you're surrounded entirely by nature? This is my God.
I think it's significant that Julius, after being born in Brooklyn and before coming to the sort of city of Los Angeles, lived on a farm in Connecticut. And he's talked about this as being a formative period in his life. So great was his identity with nature and the woods.
7 years we lived on the farm until we came to California. My father had an acquaintance who lived in Los Angeles, telling my father that the streets are paved with gold. We got on the Santa Fe Railroad and took a train across country. 5 days, 5 children.
When they moved to Los Angeles, my father had his own room. He said that his mother saw something in him.
History is strange. Here, it becomes mystical. I was ordained to become a photographer. I was destined.
He had a very inquisitive eye navigating the environment, whether it was people or social events or sporting events.
I took a photograph, and my teacher observed that their heads are all below the line of the second hurdle. He said, Julius, that's a very professional photograph. Here is an Eastman Kodak camera. It's a good gift to give to somebody who was 23 years old at the time.
And I have this vision of him wandering around, whether it's in the hills or wandering around town, seeing the world through his camera.
You know, if you're able to gather into one big picture all the small pictures that he took of Los Angeles prior to his involvement in architectural photography, you would really get a sense of a pulse of the city.
I think that is just a beautiful way of thinking of my dad and Los Angeles as siblings. They really did grow up together.
He didn't know precisely what he wanted to do, but he also knew what he didn't want, which was just to sort of follow some conventional path. And it seems as if his early life was about muddling along until he found that niche for himself. And part of that muddling along involved going to 7 years of college from which he didn't even get a degree.
At the end of 7 years, I woke up early in the morning, 3 o'clock, and I said, wait a minute, what am I doing here? I've been going to university for 7 years. I think I've had enough.
And he drifted back to Los Angeles, unclear, but not like a hopeless case, a person with an incredible creative spirit that just needed a channel for it.
Our guest is an environmentalist, photographer, who has made his reputation, I guess we could say, in architecture, Julius Shulman. Julius, this photograph of Richard Neutra, were you in architecture then?
Yes, I began my architectural photography coincidentally by doing a photograph of one of Mr. Neutra's houses in 1936 with a Westparker Kodak. And this was a rather curious experience because I had not even seen a modern house before, but this was one I visited with a young draftsman. I made some 8x10s I gave to the young man who showed him the Neutra. I got a phone call within a week I was a photographer. Opus 1, my first architectural, March 1936.
When they met, Neutra was, I believe, 44 years old. Shulman would have been almost 2 decades younger. And Neutra quickly recognized that perhaps he could find someone who might be far cheaper, perhaps more malleable.
He would have seen the ability that was nascent there in Julius and seen it as something that could be helpful to himself and to the other architects that needed to be documented.
Modernism began in Chicago when Louis Sullivan stated, "Form follows function." In the age of steel, big windows and taller buildings were possible. In Vienna, Otto Wagner proclaimed that the machine age should have a style of its own and launched the Vienna Secession, while Adolf Loos, a Sullivan devotee, denounced ornament is crime. The greatest disciple in Sullivan's Chicago office was Frank Lloyd Wright, who balanced machine age functionality with the harmony of nature. In 1911, Frank Lloyd Wright's Wasmut portfolio took Europe by storm, which greatly influenced young Rudolf Schindler and Richard Neutra, both students of Loos. Loos told Schindler and Neutra to seek out Wright in Chicago, so Schindler set forth in 1914. After serving in the First World War, Neutra went to Berlin to work for architect Erich Mendelsohn, just as Germany founded the Bauhaus School of Design and Le Corbusier was pioneering his theories, resulting in towards a new architecture. Richard Neutra left Berlin to work with Frank Lloyd Wright at the Taliesin studio in Wisconsin. In 1920, Frank Lloyd Wright built the Hollyhock House under the supervision of Schindler. Richard and Dione Neutra joined Schindler in Los Angeles in 1925. Together, Schindler and Neutra founded Southern California Modernism.
Schindler comes out here and becomes the project architect on the house that we're sitting in, the Frank Lloyd Wright Freeman House. Not only did he oversee the construction of this house, but he designed myriad number of pieces of furniture for this house.
He melded, I think, influences, Frank Lloyd Wright, European modernism, with then his own, I think, idiosyncratic approach to architecture.
So in 1922, he built his own house, which was a communal house, very, very daring and adventurous. 2 couples, each with their own studios, personal studios, and communal space.
That's where he lived. And when the Neutra came here from Europe, He and his Dione lived upstairs in one of those screen porches. Notice these walls, pre-poured concrete slabs. They're sloping inward. And Schindler designed the spaces to admit sunlight between the slabs of concrete. When I walked into the room, there was Mr. Schindler sitting at his desk in that corner. He waved at me. He knew I was coming. I was asked to photograph one of his houses. When I came back and showed Schindler the prints, he said, "Shulman, the light you used was so basically the same on both walls. That's not natural. Look around this room. The light is different there than it is on this wall. But when you photograph the Doherty house in Santa Monica Canyon, you use floodlights and you got the same value of light on this wall as you have on that wall." He gave me that wonderful correction, which I adopted the next house I did.
And I think that for me, one of the really profound things about Schindler is that he takes three-dimensional space and he incorporates time, which is where light comes in and it kind of, you know, it's the passage of time that makes you understand space.
That's very good. That's very accurate, too. It wasn't just an indoor-outdoor living. It was a sensitivity to a lifestyle.
Mark Schindler, hi. Nice to see you. You know Julius, of course.
For a long time. Mark Schindler. Oh, my God, I didn't recognize you. You don't even look like the old man, except the hair. Sit down for a while.
Yeah, have a seat.
Pull the chair. I'm so glad you can come here today. This is nice. It's a treat. Even though, as I complain, it's empty, no furniture. But nonetheless, the spirit of Schindler is always around here, which is where much of the controversies arose between Schindler and Pauline. He didn't know how to design a kitchen for modern living.
Well, my father never used the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
All right.
The women were meant to do all the cooking, but apart from that, it was very democratic. And the one of the first people to move in was Richard Neutra and his wife. At the very beginning, Schindler and Neutra were friends until Neutra managed to get a commission from Schindler's best client to do by far the largest house that either of them had ever done. And that put an end to their collaboration, their friendship.
So they really saw each other only intermittently. And my father had a heart attack in 1950. And when he arrived in the room, there in the same room was Schindler, who was dying of pancreatic cancer. They spent about a week together, kind of exchanging old times. And there was a kind of a closure.
Neutra was a terrific self-promoter, a terrific engine for getting the word across. It wasn't ideology, it was business.
And Julius, of course, helped him there, because Julius has a great eye, a great sense of composition.
Julius moved into a position of finding his own voice in photography, to the extent even that he sometimes irritated Neutra.
Neutra could be very overbearing. You know? Julius could be very stubborn. And so you had to reach a middle ground. Sometimes I was cast into the role of ambassador.
Here are two very self-absorbed, very creative, very strong-willed men. My father would carry half of our household furniture around with him, which probably gave Richard Neutra a heart attack when he saw my father drive up with all these props, because they would despoil his pure, pristine architecture. But my father wanted to make it look like people actually lived there.
My job was to help move the furniture around or hold the archetypal eucalyptus branch, much to Julius's disgust.
Julius told me once he was setting up this photograph, and also there was this thing wiggling in the upper right-hand corner. I didn't know what the heck it was, and it was Neutra holding a branch.
Neutra would collect branches of trees and plants and hold them in sort of over the camera to give the impression, not always convincing, but that there was vegetation here.
As I got to be in my teenage years, either I became more perceptive or maybe the relationship changed some. But I remember more sort of arguments happening and my father grumbling on the way home about how hard it was to get Shulman to do what he wanted him to do.
When I was photographing the Neutra Coffin House in Palm Springs, I took my camera on my shoulder and I started going outside. Neutra asked me, "Where are you going, Shulman?" I clenched my arm and I broke free and ran outside and set the camera. After the house was published, Neutra was once interviewed by a photography magazine. In the interview, he said, "When I directed Mr. Shulman to take that photograph, this is what came out."
However critical he might have been at times of Neutra's behavior, he never wavered in his acknowledgement of Neutra as the major figure, the major person who persuaded him first and then taught him how to photograph buildings.
Neutra had me come here to photograph Mrs. Miller's house, which was brand new then. I like this paving. This is going to be kept open?
Uh-huh.
Desert landscaping?
Yes.
Good.
Well, here I'm going to have a mixture of Palo Verde trees, maybe some olive trees, just dotted around.
Oh, olives especially, yes.
Yeah. I think olives would work very well here. It'd be perfect.
If you can plant some eucalyptus trees to hide the poles.
Oh, would that be wonderful?
See the mountain coming down behind the house? That's right there. So we have here an almost sacred view of Southern California. Here's the same view with more landscaping in it. Show how it developed from one year to another, from 1936 to 37, 38, and 39. She constantly sent back the pictures to me, describing what she felt I could do to improve the photography and or to honor the photography I did. But then, look what Mrs. Miller gave up to allow this horrible building come in here. I asked Mrs. Miller at that time about the property next door. Oh, no, no one's ever going to build there. But look what's there now, a pile of junk. I told Catherine to buy some charges of dynamite. So there's the story of our lives. So I'm serious. You have to plan ahead.
Mrs. Miller had to sell the house in the late 40s. He sold it on to somebody else. And they turned the garage into a kitchen.
They wiped it out, maybe.
They added a room onto the back that was, when I bought it, used as the local crack den.
I can visualize trees going there now. It's beautiful.
Oh, it won't be very long.
You'll be in the house maybe by Christmas, but not Thanksgiving. A year from now, okay?
No, we'll be closer than that.
Closer than that?
In 3 months, there'll be landscaping.
You want to bet?
A pool.
You want to bet?
I'll see you in 3
I'll
months.
bring you a bottle of scotch.
Okay.
It's a deal.
Yeah.
We have witnesses here.
That's right.
68 years later, we're back here commemorating history. In a way, you can stop time.
Neutra was an entry point into a world of architects profoundly committed to the actualizations of the ideology of the modern movement.
That ensuing year, it read like a who's who in the architectural world because Neutra introduced me to Schindler, Gregory Ain, Howell Harris, Raphael Soriano, J.R. Davidson, among others.
They were developing their own Los Angeles-based interpretations of modernism, and Julius was creating an image for it. He was immortalizing it.
was sort of a filter for this architecture, and through his images, the messages of these architects. And this was a period of time when architects believed that they could change the world. They believed that life could be enhanced through good design. It was a very optimistic period.
In the January 1945 issue of Arts and Architecture magazine, editor and publisher John Intenza announced the Case Study House program. An unprecedented experiment in architecture, the program was initiated with the intent of creating well-designed homes for the typical post-World War II family, built by what would become some of the most legendary names in mid-century architecture. The majority of these homes were immortalized by Shulman's lens. Shulman's 1960 photographs of Pierre Koenig's Case Study House number 22 are some of the most evocative images of 20th century architecture. His extraordinary night shot of number 22, viewed by millions across the globe, transformed Koenig's experiment into one of the world's most enduring architectural icons.
One of the amazing things about that picture at that time was, remember, this is the time when we were building rockets to go to the moon, and we were planning on colonizing Mars, and the sort of popular zeitgeist is caught perfectly in that picture.
While my assistant was setting some lights for me, I went outside and looked at that view, just curiosity. Oh, gee, I said, looking at the girls were sitting there, girlfriends of two of the architects who worked with Pierre Koenig. They didn't know they were going to be in the picture. They just heard in conversation.
The landscape beyond with the twinkling lights, the transparent box mounted up on the hill, and people sitting in a precarious corner of a glass house is the signature image of what one thinks about Los Angeles.
It's occupied by Carlotta and Buck Stahl. They've lived in this house almost a lifetime.
We came over to see the lot. All of a sudden, a car comes in, and it turns out to be the owner of the lot. And Buck and him talked. At the end of 2 hours, we shook hands. We bought a lot.
Add to that, the person who owned this property, I can hear him saying, "Oh boy, I got rid of that junky piece of land."
Erosion and time and rain took the corners off of this lot. So I came in 2 years of weekends and built this up to what it is today, with broken concrete walls embedded in the earth.
When we started to ask people to talk to us about the building, everybody said no way, because we did have it hanging over space. And the house was all glass.
Along comes Pierre Koenig.
And he told us, no, it would be better, safer if we did this and that. And so it was a teamwork thing. Of course, the man with the camera sure sold this house to everybody in the world.
You look pretty good. Take care of yourself.
Okay. I wish I could walk like you.
You will. You will. You have faith. I'll come back and work with you.
All right, Julius.
93 is going to help 92. He's been a jewel.
Thank you.
In our life. He really has.
The photograph lives on as an absolutely pure and simple restatement of the ideas of the case study movement, and serves as a metaphor, really, as no other house can.
As I discovered these great prints, I want to go back and study. If I would have done it some years ago, I would be a better cinematographer now. Michael Mann, the director, as he always does, had a full room filled up with still photographs. And Michael told me, Dante, I want to do now a wide shot. And I would like to be able to obtain this effect that was in Julius' photo of the house that goes out into the city. Ultimately, when he cut the movie together, he didn't use the shot. because he felt that we didn't achieve in having this quality that your photo has.
Two lights flash. After the lights went off, I exposed 5 more minutes to get the city lights at f32 to get the depth of focus.
But now I understand. I see. I didn't know that. But now I understand. Everything else was so sharp. But there was some blur on the city lights. But anyway, shooting a movie here would be a joy with the background of the photo you shot.
Action.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Huh?
And
So
cut.
nice. Okay, now we can take a look at the whole move.
The speed is good.
Yeah, we don't.
Speed is very good, yes. Very nice. What we're trying to do is kill setups.
You are.
But add in the move.
We're going to have you enter from over here. And you take all the time that you need. I want the time actually.
And the same zoom size that we have on Finale here.
Now we're rolling? Yes.
Very nice, yes. I was thinking of the real tight shot on him, the reflection of him at the glass. That's good.
Now am I going to get right on the train?
You can ride this, I'll push you all around the place.
Cutting. Thank you.
It'll be my pleasure.
Shulman's photographic work for architects, designers, and numerous publications extended well beyond the confines of Los Angeles. By carefully orchestrating the timing and placement of his images into key design and consumer magazines, he was able to effectively introduce an innovative lifestyle to the American public. As a result, Shulman became an invaluable contributor to the burgeoning architectural movement, not only as correspondent, but as talent scout and respected tastemaker as well.
Shulman's assignment to photograph a house by Albert Frey in Palm Springs for Good Housekeeping in 1947 marks a point for Shulman where he starts establishing a career with a leading figure in the desert. Frey's a very important figure. He's the first disciple of Corbusier to build in America. Frey originally lived in New York for a few years and then went directly to the West Coast to build a building and fell so much in love with Palm Springs, stayed there.
He went out in the early 30s, ended up building half of the town, including City Hall, the airport, 2 houses for himself.
I call Albert Frey's own house a kind of mine shack Parthenon. It has a corrugated roof. It's made out of steel, which is rusted. It's got a poured concrete floor that simply extends in and out of the house. But it is placed with a kind of delicate refinement and attention to detail that comes out of a free plan house.
The site is what's so fabulous about this house. And so one of the joys is that you can wake up in the morning and you look out and you see the entire desert.
Look at Tockwitz.
Yeah, straight up Tockwitz. We have this fabulous view.
It's a house designed to meet and live with the desert. Why can't new architects, young architects, be instilled with the spirit of the desert to introduce them to building in the desert? As one example, on a so-called impossible piece of property, you're constructing a house which melds with and in the landscape.
Functional as it gets, just essentially a steel and glass box. There was an affinity there between Neutra and Frey. Stuart Williams belongs to another generation. He moves there in the, I think, 1940s. He's one of the few but very productive architects who were living in Palm Springs, who had settled there.
Hello, Stuart. Julius Shulman. You had talked to Eric about the possibility of trying to avoid this particular project that we're on because you felt that you aren't photogenic enough to match my good looks. No, we won't show your face. Eric and I have been talking about, and I explained to him that you have such an ugly face, and so we don't want to show your face. We'll show the back of your right ear. Here we are. We brought the crew. Hey, I'll do it.
Yeah, you can help me do me there, old chap.
Stuart.
All right. Good to see you.
So good to see you. Thank you.
A couple of old 90-year relics here. What is this? It's sort of an invasion, I'd say.
Well, cameraman.
You just said you were coming with a general friend.
Eric Bricker, who's a producer here.
Oh, for God's
He has to have a film and a cameraman, but don't photograph his face.
Don't photograph anything.
Don't photograph Stuart yet.
Don't photograph me. Forget the yet. Just
now, wait a
don't
minute.
photograph.
Let's do this. Walk around behind Stuart. Stuart, you're going to sit here?
No, well, yes, I'm going to
Is that
sit
okay
right
with
here.
the lighting, Eric? As we came down a little while ago, I pointed out all the buildings that Stuart Williams designed down Palm Canyon Boulevard.
There were half a dozen of them along the canyon there.
The Palm Springs atmosphere was reflected in everything you did in that perimeter of the Frank Sinatra house.
And that was my first house.
And it was a good house.
Well, it was a good house.
You violated all the rules of tradition.
Well, that's right. And I made a point always of finding materials that somehow was related to the surroundings of the project.
He went to the most influential client he could have had and built a large, sprawling, modern house. And asked why Sinatra didn't object, since he'd originally asked for colonial, Stuart said he didn't know what modern was. He just wanted a roof over his head by Christmas so he could entertain the family.
You have Stuart Williams, William Cody, Frey, and a partner of Frey's, John Porter Clark, that really by post-war start building up Palm Springs as a post-war city that is all about the modern aesthetic, but a livable modern aesthetic in the desert.
One of the things I appreciate most about Julius Shulman is that he was not just interested in, quote, the stars. He was interested in those other people who might have seemed to be on the margins, but who were very good architects.
He had this unfailing eye for seeking out new talent and bringing it to the attention of the East Coast editors.
One time he had an assignment to photograph the work of an architect by the name of Herb Green in Oklahoma City, and he had designed and built this wonderful house that we called the Prairie Chicken. And Julius said, "This is exciting. I'm going to run to New York with this in my bag. I know they're going to pick this up." That piece of architecture was published all over the world, and his architecture business thrived, of course. So Julius helped to make a career for an architect. It happened more than once.
I'll have Sharon sitting on the left-hand chair.
The chance to work with him, see our house through his eyes, has been an incredible lesson, and for him to sort of see next generations is really inspiring.
During the design of the house, we incorporated a lot of Julius Shulman's photographs as a spatial construct as well as the inspiration, a very quick way to shoot for the qualities that we're striving for in the design.
Bend your knees a little bit. That's good, right there.
So everybody on position.
I have a great associate, Jürgen Nogai from Germany. He's a very wonderful person. And he and I work together on every project. We're turning out beautiful results.
Yeah.
That's good.
And we have here also more contrast.
Good. All right, let's go home.
In addition to photographing the work of emerging architects and designers, Shulman also documented the endeavors of more established masters, most notably those of the legendary Frank Lloyd Wright. Wright revolutionized the very concept of the built environment, and Shulman would later translate the architect's domestic and public spaces into vivid and persuasive imagery.
In the area around 1950, I was photographing a house for an architect who used to be an apprentice with Frank Lloyd Wright. And as a result of a conversation, it turns out that I was able to go to meet Frank Lloyd Wright the next day. He allowed me to photograph Taliesin West. So I spent 12 days. Then when I sent him my photographs, he was exuberant in praising them. He gave me other projects to photograph.
Frank Lloyd Wright designed this. When he saw this photograph, he almost kissed me.
What lens do you use here? Because that's a very narrow street that's
it's a
on in
wide-angle
San
lens.
Francisco. You're on the other sidewalk across
No, right on the curb, literally. Wide-angle lens, held straight, one-point perspective, right dead center. You don't distort. Distortion comes in only when you tilt the camera or turn it sideways.
Did this picture help you in future assignments with Wright? I mean, was he more amenable to your ideas and suggestions?
I should have brought the letter he wrote to me. It was a beautiful letter after he saw my Taliesin pictures. He said well, I won't talk about it now, except that...
Well, you can talk about it. What did he say?
You're among friends.
I'm not modest. He said, your pictures are creditable for an amateur and better than most professionals. He had not met me before. I met
Better than most professionals?
I keep that letter in my office. It's yes.
It's a humbling letter.
Oh, I was very pleased with it, to say the least.
Frank Lloyd Wright established some ideas early on that kind of wedded a new idea of architecture to its place. He changed the nature of what we think a house is. Not what it looks like, but how it's organized and how you live in it.
Another architect who changed our ideas about living spaces was John Lautner, who came out of the Frank Lloyd Wright office. As one of Wright's most promising protégés, Lautner united his passion for both architecture and engineering, creating visually thrilling spaces that remain revolutionary even today.
I refer to him as the missing link between classic modernism, the work of Neutrauer, case study house architects, and the more sort of expressive and organic work that people now associate with Los Angeles. He thought that every single house should be developed out of the site constraints and out of what the budget allowed and what the client wanted and needed.
John was a brilliant engineer. You have a house perched on the side of the hill, and there's no excavation here. It's just like a birdhouse would be. And look at the view you get from here. And he had the concept of getting a contracting company to acquire the land around here and build a series of these pods. He couldn't get a contractor to build and finance this kind of project. It's a tragedy.
Hello. How are you?
Good to see you.
Nice meeting you. How long ago did you take a picture of this house?
I photographed this house originally when it was new in 1961. Then in 1968, I made a major story about it for Life magazine.
So you're the famous Julius Shulman.
68 years of photography, of bounty cover. She's been instrumental in making my book so beautiful. She's a book designer. Well, wait till you see it.
When's it going to be published?
Ask Angelica.
I don't know. When's it going to be published? When it's at its best, then we start printing. We work so long until this book is like you can't do it better.
Angelica happens to be a very creative woman. She built this wall.
Not myself.
Not well. And
From
then
the stones off the
there's
side.
a stairway up here, up to the hill above. Someday there'll be a trail from here to my house, which is half a mile straight, otherwise you take Mulholland. You can go over the hill, and we're going to hike to our house from here someday. So, and look at the nice light coming through here, the last rays of sunlight. Isn't that beautiful?
Yes, Julius made beautiful pictures of Lautner's buildings. And Lautner, I would say, is another example of that branch of modernism, a legacy of expressionism. Eric Mendelssohn, late Frank Lloyd Wright, after all, John Lautner went to Taliesin in the late 30s and was imbued with all of that.
Frank Lloyd Wright called John Lautner the world's second greatest architect. He felt very strong about the talent of his student, and John was such an amazing builder.
The photograph of John Lautner, this is the age he was when he designed our house. And in fact, if you look behind him in the photograph, there's a design for a restaurant that incorporates a lot of the same features as the entryway of our house. You know, what we refer to as the lobby, for lack of a better description, because it's not a real practical room, it's just a spectacular room, I think.
Oh, it's a real practical room. We've had string quartet concerts in here. We've had fundraisers for Rudolf Schindler at Mocha. We had Julius Shulman's birthday party.
No, it's great as a restaurant nightclub, but I mean, as far as something in a house.
It lent itself to be something that is a little bit in the world of fantasy.
Many Lautner homes are now used in films, and for some reason, the site of the evil person.
So this is the east side of the house, and on the west side, if you walk past the pool, is the Hollywood sign.
That's just, it's really cool. You know, I grew up with that in cold Minnesota, wondering, wow, what was that? Hollywood, that's really a place, you know? But how insane to look right through a house to see.
Yes, you can literally look from west to east in this direction.
The movement of the sun and the moon, where we see them so clearly.
Here is a view of Los Angeles, if you can see it. This is progress in the eyes of many people. Pure smog. We cannot permit ecology to be destroyed because that is the lifeblood, the lifeline of our whole world. Well, I was invited to a dialogue with the PR man for Irvine Corporation.
You're very concerned about eagles and birds, and I'm very concerned about people.
They're just beginning to cut down trees and destroy the orchards and build little communities of tract houses.
We're not allowed to build houses, or we're not allowed to build businesses and do things for fear that we're going to hurt some ecology or environment, a word that you or no other environmentalist has ever been able to define for me. I don't know what the environment is if it doesn't include me.
In my photography, doing architectural work essentially,
Julius becomes much more aware of the environment and concerned about it.
He was really adamantly disgusted with what was happening to his Los Angeles.
We started a program called Project Environment USA to show how architects could relate to good environment in their design work. And for 10 years, these photographs were published and exhibited throughout the United States.
By the 1960s, Shulman had become one of the world's foremost architectural photographers. Sought after by publications around the globe, Shulman traveled continuously throughout the US, Europe, Asia, and South America, defining imagery for both the era's great architectural masters and its young pioneers.
When I went to Mexico, did a tremendous amount of work there for architects like Abraham Zabudowski and Ricardo Legorreta. Tell me, your daughter was taking photographs.
Yes,
is she
thanks
still...
to you, yes, she's still doing it. Thanks to your advice and everything.
Well, why not? It's a good business. Let the architects do all the heavy work, and we come in and take pictures like this.
They just did a book on us, an editor of Mexico.
Yeah.
I brought you a copy.
You've been busy.
Yes.
We have to attempt great things. That's a mistake. History makes it great.
Yeah, that's it. No,
So
you're right.
why don't we say we have to attempt to understand the history of our lives, the history of
Yes.
mankind?
It's better.
My honest opinion.
Yes. It's the only one you have given all your life.
As I travel around South America, I found great architecture in Montevideo, Uruguay. I found great architecture in Argentina. However, the most enticing and most dramatic of all the work I photographed there existed in Brasilia.
He went there under the sponsorship of a Mexican architect by the name of Abraham Zabudowski. And the family, you'd think Julius was a brother or something, the way they treated him. And all the kids, Uncle Julius practically, you know, and he knew all about them. And Alinka Zabudowski is a very gracious lady, made me feel very welcome.
You realize, Alinka, what a privilege it is to come in here to see what, this is wonderful. Abraham was very skilled at getting good photography. Look at this photograph. Absolutely fantastic. Chosen the right time of day when you get the light inside and outside.
Yes.
Tells you the whole story of the building. You realize when you stop here in one moment and just let the eye walk around here. Look what is achieved in a lifetime. And the contrast between each building. The man was a good architect, a good human being. Salute.
Modernism started to decline in the late 1960s as a new style, postmodernism, emerged in its place. With an emphasis on wit, ornament, and historical reference, it was a shift that would ultimately drive Shulman into retirement.
Julius had a wonderful archive, so he decided, look, Carlos, I'm going to give you, which he did, $10,000 cash. I'm going to give you $60,000 worth of camera equipment. I'm going to write you a letter of recommendation to all my existing clients. Go out, carry on, do your best. I'm going to, quote, retire, close my doors.
I felt that many architects turned to strange designs.
It wasn't architecture to him. He hated it. He hated all of these postmodern architects. He thought they were fools.
Julius is often outspoken and judgmental. I don't always agree with his judgments, but I appreciate his candor. One judgment that I do agree with him on is his opposition to much postmodernist architecture. It reminds me of Rainer Banham's definitive line: postmodernism is to architecture as female impersonation is to femininity.
As modernism slowly fell out of fashion, many masterworks were neglected, even destroyed. Shulman, however, remained a faithful steward to the modernist ideal. Ultimately, his vast photographic archive would become an indispensable resource as public taste turned enthusiastically back toward modernism.
We weren't looking to buy a house in Palm Springs. We were looking to see this house. The house had been on the market for 4 years, and it needed a lot of work. The real estate agent, as she was showing us the property, kept reinforcing the idea that you could buy this for land value and build whatever you want. So I asked her, do you really think that somebody would take this house down? And she said, well, they could. It was really at that moment that I knew we had to get this house. I sought out Julius, and he was immediately excited. He probably had 25 pictures that he could show me that day, but he had about 80 pictures that he had never printed that he printed for us. And without those pictures, we couldn't have restored the house. It had 4 owners and 2,500 square feet added onto it, which popped out of every side except the Shulman view. We decided to remove all of the additions, and that meant wherever they came in contact with the house, that's where our restoration problem was going to be.
There was a cutout in the stone here because there was a doorway that opened out into a closet that had been added. So when I first came out here, there was a sense of excitement and anticipation. But walking around the site, there was also a sense of sadness because much of the character that I remembered so vividly from school and books had been tarnished. There was also excitement because you could see the original house in there.
Up to the Gloria, let's go.
Architects of this generation were pushing the limits of their technologies. They were trying to achieve things that in many ways their technologies weren't capable of achieving. But the modernist confidence was to do it anyway. And with that came an elegance, but with that came a challenge. And these houses are desperate for care and restoration.
There weren't any working drawings of this house that we had access to. We had sketches and little and very small interior elevations of various rooms, but it was Shulman's photographs that really kind of guided us.
He captured the sensibilities of the house, the aesthetic of the house, what the house felt like. And to me, that's the genius of those photographs. Every architect practicing today has to somehow resolve the mythology that Julius Shulman captured for us. How they do it is their own business and their own ability and magic to create new worlds out of it, but really all of them have to in some way make peace with the modernism that Julius Shulman presented to us.
It's a simple but true statement that Julius Shulman is the most important architectural photographer in history. When we met around 1990, he had never really shown his photography in a fine art context. When I said I wanted to show his work in a gallery, he thought, you know, the beautiful pictures that I took on my vacation, that's what you want. I said, no. It was just such a natural thing that his work should be available as fine art photography. It's just a matter of context and perception. Since then, we've shown his work in Milan, and London, and Paris, and Cologne, and Berlin, and Munich, and New York, Toronto. It's been an extremely successful relationship.
The genealogy of architectural photography in the United States really starts with a man named F.S. Lincoln. After that, it kind of balloons out to three, which is Julius Shulman, Ezra Stoller, and the studio of Hedrick Blessing in Chicago. Their photographs are a bit darker, and they deal with ambient light. Shulman's deals more with the natural landscape, and Stoller's is the tonality of the sky. Stoller's photos are very different than Shulman in that sense of Stoller's are more elevational-like in their visual construction. Julius's photos are mostly one-point perspectives. And to show a really good modern interior, you really need to do a one-point perspective because the modern will unfold in a beautiful way.
The rooftops and floor lines recede into this single point, and they jut out at you at this very dynamic 45-degree angle. And so the images are either shooting towards you or pulling you in.
Often, the houses in real life are not nearly as beautiful as Julius's pictures. He was a master at shifting the planes around to, in a way, distill the essence of the building into one particular shot, or to even enhance the strong lines of an already powerful building and raise it to a different level. Somehow he's able to put so much of himself into the vantage point that you feel his presence in the room, even if he's not in the frame.
We had been talking about where Julius's archive should end up for many years, and there had been discussions and proposals from various museums, but I and Julius and his daughter, I think, had always been most interested in it ending up at the Getty.
Here, suddenly, they're going to strip out all the negatives and contact prints and enlargements, and the whole story of my life will now be transposed into Mr. Getty's hall.
So there's all these and all these over here and all those over there. There's a bunch of them that are out in a shed out there, and they all need to be plastic wrapped.
This is exhibit material. You can take, these are all my original prints, and if you go back, as far back, you can see the data in that. That's 54 years ago. But it's a sad experience. I don't know how you're going to plan to store these. I'm not just going to move away from this whole project. I aim to come to Getty quite frequently.
Oh, we need your help for it.
And I hope you'll ask me, because let me have a key to the gate. Because I plan to come there.
Julius had a specific organization of his archive. We, as an archival institution, do not want to change that, because it really shows Julius's thinking. And the working with the archive is just as much of importance to understand Julius's work as looking at the photos themselves.
The place is going to be barren without my archives, but there's so many other things still piled up here.
Oh, I am going to miss some of these.
And look at the work I'm doing here now. And I can still have my coffee and scones and have a good life. Thanks, my daughter Judy.
This is a man who lives in his presence, in the present, you know, and in his presence too. But he lives in the present. And it was the same thing when Olga died. It's always, he's always looking forward.
Somebody's coming up here tomorrow. Here's an order for these people.
Ah, it's empty.
Many of those pictures are not to go yet.
Right.
Because I want to sort them. Julie doesn't know how I feel about those pictures. Many of those pictures are our salon pictures, personal pictures, and they're not ready to be shipped yet. I'll be all right. And I've got these wonderful things here.
Photographs, but Judy's not coming back till Sunday.
Sunday, what Sunday?
Sunday's the 5th, when you're coming for brunch at the house. But, Joyce, I have a meeting at 2, so I can't stay around this afternoon.
All right. That's how you feel about it?
I'd love to be here. You know I would.
I know. That's it. Bye-bye.
I think that a major reason for the revival of modernism in the late 1990s is the republication of Julius's photography by Taschen. People look in Taschen books, they say, I want to live here, and they want to become part of a Julius Shulman photograph.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
There we go.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Les.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful one.
That's a collector's item now.
Yeah, now it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Enjoy it.
Julius has a portfolio that encapsulates a generation of architecture that many people would never get to see in the flesh. Benedict Taschen mythologized the man who mythologized the buildings.
I can't even tell you how many of your photographs I have.
Everything's fine? Wonderful. I never sold so many books. It's astounding when you think about the number of people who've been here tonight. Places. The whole firm was here, I guess. It's amazing, don't you think? Yeah. Where do we go now?
So, no, he's on his way. I think he will be.
So then we have to come up with a title for the book as well. You have seen all these big books here with Araki and Leni Riefenstahl, and so yours is, of course, a little bit bigger. Yeah. Of course. How can we else do this? And what we should do is, I brought you a couple of proofs here, and let's just think about the color corrections and what we can do.
Then you don't touch this. This is perfect.
I think so too, yeah. And this is your first wife, yeah?
Emma, yeah.
Emma.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, it's as well in this show in Madrid as a big print, and people love it there.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful. So I think color-wise, that's all fine here. And with the Frank Lloyd Wright, I think that's fine too. Don't you think so?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is here in Palm Springs, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a Burgess house. Albert Frey was the architect. Perfect.
Perfect? Okay,
Perfect.
done.
That's Montreal, Canada.
Oh, that's cold.
This is the secret, is to have the same values of light here as here. This is sunlight, that's God.
Yeah.
This is Julius.
God and Julius. That's cool. I think it's a great combination. Julius, you know, for the book, when we do it, I think in the next couple of days, I hope you will receive the signature pages.
Yeah.
So that you can sign them all, the 2,500, and then we later on bind it in the final book.
Good. No problem. I'll be all right.
Good. So we don't have to make too many corrections here, just a very few.
Very few.
Good. Julius, if you'd like to say hello, we have a sales meeting here. Say they like you.
the architecture of Southern California, modernism is associated with the idea of lifestyle. Modernism less as something that is a societal utopia and more as something that is a personal utopia. And Julius's work has had a huge influence in that perception.
Is there a broom or a brush, the carpet?
The footprints is get rid of the ones here.
There, right there, hold it. Move this chair, there, oh, this table, same way.
He sort of really set the standard for the depiction of everyday life in a modern home.
There. The other chair, slide that back a little bit towards the window. Good. And you drop this down here, you got more floor. Perfect. Yep. All right, let's do it.
Shulman's pictures have this base of romance to them. His work represents a certain ideal that happened years ago, and yet it helped create the essence and ethos of, you know, this city.
My house.
Where?
Here. He got me my first client. And then when I got out of school, he got me my second client, his brother-in-law, or ex-brother-in-law.
Yeah, Julius Rome.
That's the living room. Yeah. These two things are guests. And one thing that Julius also did, even though he wasn't successful, he tried to get arts and architecture to be interested in my work. They didn't like my work, but that wasn't his fault. He tried, I remember.
I'm glad to see this. It's shaping out.
Yeah, it's this principle, you know.
Yeah.
That the pieces interlock and you can. Yeah. So I found a drawing by Leonardo.
Yeah.
The same.
No.
Yeah. So then I said, but I found the drawing after I did this. So he copied me, I said. We were very influenced by Harwell Harris, Frank Lloyd Wright, Japan. So I came out of that. I didn't just invent a language.
Your presentation of the initial Disney Center designs left a lot of people aghast. My God, they would say. And I said I was one of those too. Your vocabulary was foreign to us. But you explain here that there's a misinterpretation of your design for the Disney Center. And you gave me a note about my redemption.
I formalized it by saying that this was the redemption of Julius with love.
Well, you redeemed yourself, and I, in turn,
got redeemed.
Right here. So we see where this wall meets that wall, huh? I think it was here.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get rid of, in doing so, we get more seating. Seating is very important.
Mm-hmm.
See? That's not bad. It's almost a good exposure.
Mm-hmm.
A little
bit more.
I'm showing the beginning and end of the walls. So it's that simple. It's an architectural story. Ooh. This is a perfect exposure.
I think so, yeah. We can do it in that way.
The bottom of the stage here, when that's enlarged into a reproduction, it's going to show the story, how this is related to that wall here. See, it comes around here, back around here. So we have a perimeter.
Everything.
You did?
Yeah, the point.
How about the bottom?
Everything.
Clap
we can crop there, but we do not need now, because I don't want to go.
You see the
we
top
get
here.
everything.
That's fun. Let me look at that. Oh, wait a minute. How about putting on 75 and doing it horizontal? All right, there's your rising front.
We have vignettations in
Where?
this.
Let me check the Polaroid, shall we?
You see, we are getting dark in the corners.
I like that. I want that.
Yeah, it's a tunnel view.
No, we always do that in our pictures. We darken the corners, always, deliberately.
I never do that.
I do. That's why people like my photography.
Okay.
I dodge it in purposely. I control what I call the visual acoustics.
popular is one thing, but lucky is another thing, especially that right now, the kind of architecture that you've documented, that is so much in favor again, and that you can see all these people come here to hear you.
You've heard the term mazel tov when someone gets buried? I mean married. Same. So apparently, I've been graced with mazel. Good luck. Fate.
We've talked a lot now about architecture, but you've also been very interested in the city, specific ideas, I think, about the city. Is that correct?
We have no control, no planning, no urban planning. How would you like to live somewhere in that pile of junk? Can we control the real estate market? No, but we can guide it intelligently.
You are a rock star.
Who?
A rock star. You're like famous, like Elvis Presley all of a sudden.
Oh my
What's
God.
the deal?
I'm better than he is.
Yeah, I'll say.
Let's go cut. Where's the cake here? Happy birthday, dear Julius. Happy birthday to me. Thank you.
The first toast is to my father, a man whose curiosity and optimism have propelled him through a magnificent life. I would also like to have us all remember the modernist architects who made my father's work possible.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Thank you. And this is the original concrete structure.
Yes.
I have always admired Julius from the standpoint of his, somebody who's as together as he is and at his age and still is vital. He's being asked so often to be out there and talk about where he's come from and where he's, what he believes in today.
The camera is the least important element in photography. That's why in my seminars I will not permit the camera to be introduced until we look at what we're judging. We've started a new organization called Julius Shulman Institute at Woodbury, and we're starting a new program for high school students lecturing on photography. Now in this composition, we're seeing all the way into this dark part of the building here.
President Nielsen, it is my honor to present Julius Shulman, the undisputed master of architectural photography, for the honorary degree, Doctorate of Architecture.
Thank you all so much. I can't begin to tell you what this means, but I'm beginning a new life every day. And let me fill you in something very simple. Life is good. Life can be beautiful. What more can I ask? Thank you very much.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Do you perceive yourself as a romanticist?
Oh, yes. I have fun.
I learned something, Julius, from talking with you. I have a gate, and I've got a box from the shepherd. I think that's one of the greatest architectural pictures I've ever seen.
That's wonderful. Great picture.
It's fun.
I like
Well, this
it.
points out about photography, success, romanticism. If you're worried about the job you're going to do, you can't be bothered with a barking dog. Come on, let's get into the house. Let's go shooting, Joe. But if you're relaxed and enjoy what's around you, you speak to those dogs.
Julius, you enjoy your work, don't you?
Oh, what else is there?
The newly created Julius Shulman Institute at Woodbury University
and the recent acquisition of his archive by the Getty have secured Shulman's place as one of modernism's most eloquent ambassadors. Both his personal and photographic legacy continue to endure, perpetuating the philosophy, simple beauty, and pioneering spirit of modern architecture.